is a little far away from you.
Um, hold on, let me check to make sure it's on the actual mic.
Yeah, you sound low too.
Oh, no, it is there. It's there. Hello, hello, hello.
That's better.
It's still showing the volume super low, even if I'm like right up in it. That is weird. Why is it?
Huh. Check the gain on your mic.
Test, 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 test. Oh my God, it's so loud. Test, test, test.
That's really loud.
Test, 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 test,
There you
test.
go.
That good?
That's good. Yeah.
The gain was all the way down.
Oh, okay, that was probably it.
Yeah, all right.
All right. So we got back from vacation yesterday, and I had a Fitbit charge. So simple, you know, step tracker with some very light watch features. After this is toward the end of the trip, the last couple of days after back to back 15-mile days, the
Wow.
thing just gave up.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, I did. I had 15-mile days. I wake up the next morning and it's just like the Fitbit logo. So I tried to go through the whole hard reboot process, and it wouldn't start back up. And I just have this vision in my head saying, "That's it, I'm done."
How many steps is 15 miles? Like 30,000?
32,000.
Yeah.
32,000.
Wow. I'd be trash, man.
Yeah. Well, by the end of the trip, like my right calf was nice and tight. My feet were shot, and really, I think what put my feet over the edge was one of the last days we went to the water park. So running around in bare feet all day, just kind of really kind of put the fork in them. But yeah, it was funny. It just how the thing gave up. So my wife's like, maybe it's about time you upgrade to an Apple Watch. I've been holding off. So let's see.
You upgraded, huh?
I went out, upgraded to an Apple Watch.
Nice. Well, I followed your lead and I upgraded to a iPad with an Apple Pencil.
Oh, nice. How's that working out for you?
It's been awesome, and I've primarily just been using it for note taking, and it's amazing how like the tactile, like just writing during meetings instead of like typing notes, I'm so much more focused. It's a weird phenomenon for me. Like I don't know. It's like just the act of writing it. Maybe it's like a slower, I don't know, but I've really, really enjoyed it. And I'm also using it to take notes on like books I'm reading and stuff. And so like, I just enjoy the writing on it. It's very cool. So,
yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on it kind of also changing up just the dynamic of like, instead of sitting there on a keyboard, like being able to just take it and be away from a desk?
Yeah, I've really liked it, and I've also been using it for content consumption. So like I have, whether it's reading books or I have a couple of subscriptions. I think I have 3. Like I have HBR, I have the Monitor, I have the Atlantic. So I have several subscriptions that I have, and it's nice to just take it away and sit somewhere else and read it on the iPad. It's nice to kind of break out from the office and kind of be. I thought at first it's like, I need to maybe have all this stuff so I can have it just like a computer, but something about forcing me to slow down a bit and be a bit more deliberate feels very freeing.
Yeah, and that I agree. That's what I like it for. Is it helps me when I have to sit and plan.
Yeah,
like when I'm trying to plan out like a particular project or just even my next steps for the next week, having that and being able to take it away from the laptop, because I find myself sometimes like sitting, or in this case standing in front of the laptop, and with my hands on the keyboard it's like what to write, what to do, where with that I think one thing, like the focus of like only one or two things on the screen and it being full screen, and even just something in your lap like a notebook, it helps.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it. To be honest, I haven't even spent any time kind of setting it up or the workflow, and I'm sure there's way more about it that I don't even know how to use or how to use it. So I'm sure the value of it will increase. But so far, I've been happy with it.
Nice. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. So you upgraded the watch. You have it unlocking your computer, tracking your workouts.
Yeah, and I had the Fitbit doing that. But like there's some upgrades in that case with like more of just instead of just the movements, like the heart rate and everything.
Yeah.
And I just got it set up yesterday, so I barely had it on for 24 hours. So we'll see. But the one thing is like I just need to turn off like the vibrating. Like I don't want
yeah.
that has been my reluctance to getting it, is just how connected it is.
Yeah.
The simpler, I kind of like the simpler Fitbit. So I've been really trying to go in and play with the settings, the notification settings.
Yeah.
So I get valuable notification settings, not just get bombarded with them. And my wrist isn't always vibrating.
Yeah.
It's like even just say, like, because it pairs with the phone, Slack notifications come through.
Yeah.
And calendar notification, everything. If I'm not careful, this thing will be just buzzing all the time.
Calendar, phone call, Slack. You got to stand up. You have a thing due. Yeah. It's over. It can be overwhelming.
Like I want to turn off some of those things. Yeah, it's neat when I'm doing something and like a notification comes in. I can Jason sent me a message about half an hour ago, so I was quickly scanning through it. I can see it on the phone, or on the watch. But I really do want to kind of limit the notifications it gives me, so I don't get that notification overload.
Yeah, I agree. Are you using it for sleep tracking as well?
Well, I'm going to. I'm going to try to make sure I charge it like a point during the day, because my brother-in-law has been telling me like he and his wife have been really using it to track their sleep. So I want to get into the habit of that and see what that tells me.
Yeah, I have as well, and I don't know how trustworthy the metrics are, but I will tell you for me, and it's been one of the hardest changes to make, and I have to literally fight it every night. But I'm using an app that syncs with the watch called Auto Sleep, and it tracks both your sleep quality and your readiness for the day based on how well you slept. And my metrics are off the chart good when I don't eat anything after 7 p.m.
That makes sense.
But it's so hard to do.
Oh, it's incredibly hard to want to go get one last snack when you're finishing up a TV show at 9:15 at night.
Yeah,
it is. But I think it was the last episode of the previous episode when we were talking about. I think we were talking about intermittent fasting.
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I have recently talked about it. I can't remember if we talked about it on the podcast or not. But like that, believe it or not, 7 o'clock is like my cutoff time. And I'll tell you this, like when I am good for like a couple weeks in a row, and then I have that one night where I have that late night snack, it's funny how obvious it is the next day, how like that eating late at night just disrupts your entire sleep pattern.
Yeah. And for me, it's like I just feel like shit. But still, even though I know I'm going to not feel great, it's still hard. I'm like, I need to go eat a half dozen donuts right now. Anyway, well, that's cool.
So yeah, I fell for the pitch on the Apple Watch. So we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, I'm excited to hear how you're leveraging it.
Yeah. Because it is there's a lot in there. There's a lot. And you were talking about the iPad and just getting everything out of it, and like it's funny because I think back to like when Steve Jobs was running Apple. Like it was all about simplicity and the beauty of simplicity. And I will say, like, having been an Apple user for over 20 years at this point, because I switched to Mac products before it was cool.
I mean, if we want to flex and compare.
Yeah. No, just saying, like.
Yeah.
Like I was using a Mac before. It was after the iPod, but it was before the iPhone and the iPad and everything.
Yeah.
But that being said, like having that kind of history with those products and everything, I've seen them becoming more and more complex. And that's what I'm trying to do with the watch is like, what do I need to make sure it's finely tuned to do? Like to give me what I need and not just either get lost with it and not take advantage of it, or try to do too much and get just overload with it.
Yeah. And it's hard not to because it has all these features, and so you're like, well, I need to use all of them to justify me owning this, but it's a bit of a trap.
Exactly. And just like vendor pitches in the martech and analytics space.
There you go.
But when I started going down the Apple Watch story, I didn't know how I was going to tie it in. But as we started talking about like device overload and feature overload, it just kind of set itself up.
Okay, fair enough.
So yeah, let's pivot into today's topic. And the last several episodes we've been talking about the various things that go into running an analytics team and an analytics org. We talked about the use of Agile to manage the team. We talked about being leaner. We talked about being smaller and still being efficient. Today, I want to change it up a bit and focus on things that leaders of those teams face outside of just running the day-to-day, month-to-month of those teams. And one of which is vendor pitches. Because for those that had the opportunity to see Jen Kunz's talk at the Marketing Analytics Summit in June, one of the slides she showed up there was the martech Loom Escape. And it's just funny how every year each of those logos gets smaller and smaller and smaller with the growing number of vendors. So if you're running an analytics team, if you're running a marketing team, if you're not getting pitched by someone on a weekly basis, you're doing something wrong. Because
Or you're lucky and your contact information hasn't made it onto some list yet, but it will.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, they're really good with giving you all of the features that make their product great. It's having the discernment of making sure that does this product work for you and your work. So today, right now, I've titled this episode "Having the Wisdom to Ask Why" when it comes to vendor pitches, because at this point, everybody listening to this, they've sat through at least one vendor pitch, if not, most likely multiple. And you've run into one or more of the situations where with the pitch, the problem, the solution are oversimplified, or the vendor doesn't fully understand your situation, your specific problems. And then ultimately, people are just, you got a vendor that's going scattershot and trying to hit up everybody. The vendor's product doesn't actually address the problems that your team has. So if you're not careful to recognize some of these patterns that may be happening, it becomes easy to get lost and become excited with the possibility of using a new tool and all of the features. Like we were talking about, integrating an iPad into your work, me adding the Apple Watch to both work, notifications that come up, and just, overall lifestyle. It's easy to get focused on the features of the tool and, not necessarily the why of the tool as it relates to your organization. Why does your organization need this new tool? Is it necessary? If it is, why is it necessary? So knowing when to ask those why questions. What steps can someone take to fully ensure that, they're fully vetting a new tool and not getting distracted by the shiny new features?
Well, I mean, I think that the title begs the first thing that we should be asking. If we're not able to slow down enough to say, well, why are we even talking about this? Why are we even spending the time to evaluate it? Then that's where our problem is. But we do it so often. I mean, we do it as teams, as organizations, and we do it in our personal lives. Sales and marketing, when done really well, is incredibly compelling. And how many times have you been sitting at home and you've just run out and bought something and you're sitting there looking at it and you're like, why the hell did I buy this? I don't need this. Like, we've all done it, right? But, we saw someone else that had it. We saw a compelling pitch, or, we were out and we got pulled into someone pitching it, and we're like, well, I need that. When I was younger, my grandparents would take me to the state fair, and they always had those booths where the guy with the headset on, like, pitching some kitchen gadgets or some other thing. And it's like every year I saw my grandparents walk home with a new thing. I'm like, did we really need that? But when marketing is good, it's good, right? And you're like, well, in the moment, you're like, yeah, I need that. And what's crazy is those 1995 purchases that we make when someone's showing you this fancy new slicer thing that's just going to save all our time in the kitchen. That crazy enough expands to spending $500,000 on an analytics platform or a film. Like, we're talking big money purchases, but how often have we seen, a really slick presentation by a sales team backed up with some really powerful marketing, and all of a sudden we're signing a contract for a tool, and then we're like, wait a minute, do we really need this, guys? So, I think we really need to be cognizant of the fact that And look, we work in the space, right? We know the tricks and we know everything that's happening, and yet we're still susceptible to it. And so I think it's really important that we slow down and we ask those questions. I think a secondary cause to that is we may be asking the why questions, but oftentimes the why questions don't have the validity or weight because we just don't know why. There's no answer to it. And I think a lot of that is a misalignment problem or a cultural problem within the business. So I think there probably are MarTech leaders that are saying, do we really need this? Why are we going to use this? What's the point? But there's no alignment with the business, and therefore it's really tough to answer that question because we don't even know why we exist. And so I think it's kind of a two-headed problem.
Yeah, I every time you mention something like that, the why do we exist? I think of the example you've given where early on one of our initial engagements, going into a client and asking the working group, not the ones who actually signed the engagement, but the working group. It's like, why does the website exist? And no one can answer that.
And it sounds like no. People are saying no, 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 that doesn't. It happens.
It happens.
And these are really smart people working for super, name brand organizations. Why do you have a website? Huh? No one's ever asked us that before. That's a really good question. And
So,
yeah.
yeah. So years ago, I worked with a guy who spent some time as a car salesman, and he goes, if you're ever going to buy a car, if you want to know if the person's legit or not, like they really know the features and they actually really use the stuff, with the brand, ask them what brand of car they drive. If they really care, they're going to drive the brand that they sell. If they're driving something else, that could be a hint that this person is just kind of blowing smoke up your ass.
Yeah, and I mean we see that all the time in the martech space, and I think again they're really really good at it, and it's very compelling. Even if it's not what they're bought into, they can sell the hell out of it. I think this we're talking about knowing or having the wisdom to know when to ask why, but it's also that underlying why which makes you either very susceptible to these pitches or makes it super super clear cut on which ones you want to hear and which ones you don't. So again, if you don't know why you exist as an organization, if you don't know why the website or digital properties or mobile app or whatever you're supporting exists, if you don't know what your company's purpose is, then you're susceptible to every pitch under the sun, right? Because every pitch could be somehow aligned to what you're trying to do because you have no idea what you're trying to do. But when you have clarity on your why, it makes it so much easier. It's frustrating to me to get pitched all the time, especially when they're pitches that are not that are lazy, that are not showing that they've done their research. But we are crystal clear on why we exist as a company. So when I get pitches, it takes no time at all to say, does this align with what we're trying to do? No? See ya. Yes? Okay, I'm interested. Let's talk. And so I think, wisdom to know when to ask why is important, but having that understanding of why we're doing what we do is just as if not more important because it really does help inform those conversations and makes you less and less susceptible to this, again, especially in the martech space, incredibly persuasive techniques that these vendors are using to pitch their solutions.
Yes. So let's go with the assumption that the team, especially the leadership of the team, knows the why of why the organization exists, why the team exists, what their purpose is. Um, what is the importance then of those directors and above asking why when these pitches come in?
Well, again, I think it's forcing the conversation, forcing an analysis and assessment of what we're trying to solve for, right? Like, am I buying an Apple Watch because I want to look cool or it's trendy or everyone in my family has it, so I want to fit in? That's a much different conversation than am I buying an Apple Watch because I need something to specifically track metrics around my sleep? I need something that's going to be trustworthy to help capture my activity movements, and I need something that's going to give me a really high quality data of my heart rate and oxygenation levels. Like, those are two completely separate conversations. And I think it's very pertinent for how that applies to the martech space. Am I looking at a customer data platform because everyone else is doing it and it sounds cool and I need to have it? That's a completely different conversation than, we're trying to get a much richer understanding of our customer journey across multiple touch points, and we believe that those are two completely different conversations. And I fear that most conversations are the former, right? Like, most conversations are around, well, we don't know really why we need this, but like, I see other people need it, and like, other companies are talking about it, and I see really compelling content on LinkedIn about how companies are doing all this cool stuff with these platforms, so I probably need it. That's why it's so important for someone to step in and force this discussion of, well, why do we need it? What are we trying to solve for? Is it we're getting this because it looks cool to wear an Apple Watch, or are we getting this because we're getting this to solve a very specific pain point or challenge or opportunity that we've identified within our business?
Mm-hmm. You remind me of the early marketing days of the iPod. Actually, not the early marketing days. Maybe right before it took off, and for really, like, the iPod was probably one of the last MP3 players standing, but it wasn't the first to the market. It was actually fairly late to the market. Do you remember any of, like, the MP3 players before the iPod came out?
Oh yeah, I had some of them, and they were super
Yeah,
clunky.
yeah, incredibly clunky. They came with all different kinds of software to organize your music. A lot of times you had to drag and drop the files over. The screen wasn't that great. And then the iPod came out, and again, I'm trying not to be an Apple fanboy here. Like, I enjoy the products, but I try not to go down the complete fanboy rabbit hole. Um, so you have the iPod, and the iPod was a great product. I actually still have a couple of mine put aside. Like, they streamlined the UI for anybody who remembers any of those MP3 players before the iPod came out. It had a streamlined interface, both the click wheel and the screen itself, easy to navigate, easy to sync, all of those various features. What what was the main marketing gimmick that made the iPod take off?
I can't remember.
1,000 songs. A
The
thousand
the
songs in your
song the
pocket.
songs in your pocket, yeah.
Yeah, because that's the other thing. If you remember the early, a lot of the early MP3 players, they were maybe 256 megs, if that. Some of them were just like SD cards you would put in, or some other kind of proprietary media that you could maybe get a couple albums on. You had to frequently swap it out. So now all of a sudden it was 1,000 songs in your pocket, and like that is, and right there, that spoke to several people on so many different levels. I can have all my music easy to carry, and they didn't have to go through the powerful touch wheel that helps you quickly navigate, the great shuffle feature, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's simplicity in the messaging and simplicity in the experience, right? And I don't know that you're overly fanboying because, or maybe you are, I don't know, but
I'm borderline. Let's admit it. I'm kind of
right.
borderline there, and I'm trying to keep myself from jumping over that line.
But I do think it's fair to talk about that from an experiential standpoint, that there is something to it that makes it so incredibly impactful. I saw it. So when my grandma bought her first smartphone, it was some, like, who knows what it was, some knockoff brand or something. She was constantly frustrated with it, calling me up, making me come over because she didn't know how to use it. I'm like, I don't know how to use it. I can't figure this thing out. It's like I can't navigate the screens. And I'm like, you know what? Throw this thing away. I'm buying you an iPhone. She got an iPhone, and without any help from me, a week later, she's making FaceTime calls. She's managing her calendar in it. Like, she's doing, because, It's just so like the thought process into the experience is so well designed, so well thought out.
Yeah. So kind of bringing it back, like kind of talking about like this and marketing tags that kind of speak to the why instead of the what, to bring us back around to martech. The one thing that in the martech space, and I don't want this episode to be about bashing sales, because one of the things I do want to make sure we talk about is that sales done right will find help these people find the why.
Yeah.
It's when it's how do you get past the shiny new features of, oh, that would be cool to do, versus getting past that and saying, yes, that feature would solve this problem for us, or it is valuable for us for this reason. So I want to make sure we cover that and not turn this into a sales bashing thing.
No, no, and in fact, I think it really helps highlight the value of really good sales executives, because those that are, and I don't know, I'll just call it what it is. Like those that take the used car approach, create really bad experiences, but they don't care, right? And you can tell that they're in it for the short term. I'm pushing this product. I don't care about this product. It doesn't matter because a year from now I'm going to be working for a different company, selling a different product. It's such a contrast between that and sales executives that truly see their role as an educational role and see taking the opportunity. To your point, it's like let's not only talk about the features and why this is such an incredibly cool platform for your business to have, but let's talk about the why behind it. Like, why would you want to use this? What problems are it solving? Like, people from a sales perspective that are taking a long-term approach to it, whether they're going to be at the company or not, they know that the right approach is to sell something that is going to provide value over the long term, because they know that that customer will be a repeat customer. That customer will be a happy customer that tells their friends about it. And so this, yeah, it isn't about bashing sales. It's about, I think, really highlighting those in sales and those in marketing, to be honest, because there are marketers that do the same. There are those that are there to trick you and cheat you, but there are also those that are there to help educate you and help you understand the why and the reasoning behind it. And those are the ones that you want to do business with, and those are the ones that I think that we need to celebrate. It's so easy on LinkedIn to celebrate the former, and they put all their social proof online, and they post pictures of their fancy sports cars and their mansions and their beach houses, and look how cool I am. And screw those guys. Like, I want to highlight and talk about the people that are helping market and sell these solutions for vendors that are truly helping partner with the companies that they're selling to help them build that wisdom, to help them ask the question. And it may seem scary, but if I'm selling, and it's something I do when I sell to our prospects, I if they don't know the why, I put up a stop sign and say, let's talk about, like, do you even need to buy this service from us? And they're like, wait, what? Aren't you supposed to be selling us? No, I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to understand, like, if this is something you really need, and if it is, then I want to sell it to you because we can be helpful for you. But if it isn't, I don't want to sell that to you. Those are the techniques and the sales people and the marketers that we should be celebrating. And again, they're out there, but unfortunately, it's the latter, the ones that are in there trying to take advantage of people, especially those that don't know why we're doing what we're doing, that I think deserve to be called out. But definitely not a bashing session.
Yeah, yeah. So let's actually flip it around a little bit and dive into that. So, changing the perspective of being that sales executive or that pre-sales engineer. What are some of the things you could do? How can you be that person that works to actually help people understand the value and the why to actually create long-term value, create a long-term partnership?
Sorry, what was the question? How can you identify?
Well, what steps can you take? How can you be that person?
Oh, if I'm in a sales engineering or sales role,
Yes.
I mean, I think it starts with your purpose, your why. So is my why just to, hit my quota this quarter and cash out as much money as I can? It's going to be really, really difficult to think in terms of being empathetic and teaching your prospects. The crazy thing is when you do it, you hit your mark, you you exceed your mark. But if that's your purpose, then it's really difficult to go about it the right way. And so I think the most important thing is to, the why seems to be the common thread we're talking about here, is understand your why. Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Is it to build meaningful relationships? Is it to sell products and services that my prospects truly need? If so, that's where I need to start. Because if I have that and I'm rooted in that foundation, then it becomes really, really easy to shift my focus from tactics, from tricks to, get a sale done, to me just wanting to teach and educate and make sure they're making an informed decision. That becomes easy. But if you don't understand your why, just as if your buyer doesn't understand the why, it's incredibly difficult to do anything other than the tactics. And unfortunately, because there's so much pressure to perform, we tend to use the tactics to kind of game the system, which ultimately creates really bad experiences for everybody involved.
Interesting. Interesting. All right. So, kind of, bringing us back to the topic at hand, what we wanted to talk about, putting yourself in that role of running an analytics org. How would you vet incoming, um, incoming pitches, incoming requests to talk and to try to sell you something? What were maybe some of the initial things you would do to kind of filter out those that you don't need versus those that could be valuable?
Again, like, I'm going to come back to the why, right? Like, I'm going to understand what I'm trying to solve for my organization, and how that aligns with the business goals, and how that aligns with my team's goals. And if a vendor is pitching me and it's clear that they haven't taken the time to understand that or to ask me those questions, it's really easy for me to say no. Our time is super, super limited. We can't be sitting in pitches all day. We can't be reading vendor proposals and emails all day. And so for me, it's a very first segmentation of, have these guys done their research, or are they asking the right questions to really understand what we're trying to solve for? If that's a yes, I'm more than happy to put them down the path of spending some time to evaluate if this is a good investment for us to make, because I don't know everything. We need help. I don't know all the solutions that are on the market. So yeah, I want people to proactively come to me, but I want them to come to me with the right intent. And so if they fit in that, let's go down that path and have some really informed conversations built on trust and the desire to build long-term meaningful relationships, and the products and services are kind of a byproduct of that. If they're coming to me and it's lazy, they haven't done any research, it's clear they don't care about me, they're just trying to generate a lead, close a sale, for me, it's an easy, immediate no. Am I going to toss some out that may be beneficial? Maybe, but it's worth it for me. I don't have time to evaluate all of these things. And so I have to have an immediate yes, you're in, or no, you're out. 95+%, 98% of the pitches I get are an immediate no, because it just doesn't fit into that mold of what I'm trying to do. And so if you're running an analytics organization, especially a name brand one, and your contact info has gotten out, you're getting hit up all the time. And it literally can become a full-time job if you're putting your all into evaluating every one of these asks and pitches. You can't. You simply can't sit in on every pitch. So you need to develop that fundamental, why are we doing what we do, and have that initial filter to say, if you don't pass this initial filter, I can't spend any more time with you than it takes for me to delete this email, because I simply don't have time. And it's a really powerful place to get to, because I know so many in analytics leadership positions that are so overwhelmed with asks, and this is just another thing that goes on the pile, and they feel like, in analytics, we're so non-confrontational. We like to be people pleasers, and so we feel like we have to give every one of these pitches the same weight. And it's simply not true. We have to respect our own time. It needs to be anchored in why we're doing what we're doing. And it's completely healthy to say, I have a firm system in place, a filter to say, is this something I'm going to spend my time evaluating or not? And it's just really freeing and empowering to be able to put that in place and not have to sit through, pitch after pitch, email drip campaign after email drip campaign, because you know what you're trying to solve for versus not. And if it's not helping you get where you want to be, and it's not someone that is going to invest in that, just tell them no.
Yeah, and somehow my contact information has gotten out there, so I'm also getting the vendor pitches, and some of them you could tell they just took like a couple little bits from my LinkedIn profile
Mm-hmm.
to make it sound like they know what it is, but
They
yeah,
don't.
they get really bad sometimes.
Really bad.
Yeah.
Really bad. Yeah.
So I know you get frustrated at half-ass sales attempts. What
Yeah.
are some of the things you've done? There's one in particular I'd love for you to talk about. Like, what have you done to try to, not just be an asshole and ignore people?
Yeah, I've experimented with several things, but recently I've actually built a web page where I talk about my desired approach for how I want to be pitched, and I actually give some context and information and links that people can read. It's like if you want to try again and come back and give a more personalized pitch for me for what I'm doing and what I'm trying to solve for, I will absolutely give you the time to listen to it. And so when I get these really lazy cold emails, I'll instantly respond with that. Kind of I've got a text expander that sends that message back, links to my web page that gives them all the information they need. I've had. Do you want to? So let's say I've had about 100 of those that I've sent out. Do you want to take a guess at the take rate of people that have actually clicked through and responded with something meaningful?
Two.
Two. I've had 10 that clicked and then came back and just continued their automated campaign and just completely ignored any of the context. I had two that actually took the time to read it and come back with some really personalized response, and I gave them both time and meaningful time. Not just I'm going to listen to your pitch, but I'm going to give you feedback. I'm going to, if this works, we're going to continue the conversation. So, but 98% of the rest of them, nah, I don't have time for that. I don't care. I don't really care. But yeah, it's been a fun little project to do, and it's kind of helped me stop being so frustrated every time I see it. I'm like, okay, well, I'll just send them some resources, and if they're serious, they'll read it and they'll come back to me. If not, well, I gave them a chance, and they just don't care, which proved my point, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just working from a script in that case.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what happens to an org when, aside from just being in endless vendor pitches, um, what happens to an org when the team leadership doesn't ask why? And again, assuming they understand the why of their team, but when it comes to vendor pitches, they don't ask why. Like, why do we need this? Why are we looking into this? All of those questions. What typically happens?
Well, you've seen what happens. You end up collecting a lot of tools that add a lot of maintenance costs, create a lot of frustration. A lot of them just end up sitting in the corner collecting dust because there is no why. We don't understand what we're doing, so we just buy all these tools and we're collecting tools to collect tools. And again, from our standpoint of like sustainable analytics or simplicity, it would be far better to have two or three tools that are really well aligned with what you're trying to do than like some of these companies 20, 30, even like what are we doing here? Like I don't know, it kind of looked cool. Like again, back to the state fair, I don't know, this guy was like slicing onions with this thing and it looked cool, so we had to buy it, so we'll throw that in the kitchen, somewhere.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels like organizations just buy tools to show movement. That, oh, this next thing is going to be what solves our problem.
Yeah, I mean, without getting too political, it's like why so many politicians are into rage politics and upset about everything. It's because they have no plan. It's like I have no agenda. I have no real way to think about how to put policy in place to help the citizens of the country or my constituents in my state. And so let's just get everybody mad and rage about stuff. It's because they have no substance. And it's the same for analytics organizations. They don't know what they're trying to do. They don't know what they're trying to solve for. And so they buy tools and it gives the appearance that we're doing stuff. And so not all the time. I mean, there are definitely companies that we've worked with that have really, really big complex stacks and they're really fully utilizing it. They have a plan. They have something that they're trying to solve for. But I think by and large, when you see organizations that are over tooled, it's a pretty big indicator that they don't have a really firm understanding of what their purpose is as an analytics organization or a marketing organization or whatever.
Yeah, and I've also run across people in my time in this space where you add like they basically hop from place to place to place. They come in like to buy stuff, start building stuff, and then as soon as the building and buying gets boring, move on to the next place
Yeah,
to go do it.
we all know someone like that, and I guarantee everyone listening to this knows someone like
Yeah,
that.
I can think of a few examples. And what happens is they come into an organization where maybe there are problems that need to be solved. So instead of getting down to what got us to the point of these problems, and again, another question of why are we here? Um, why are we in this state? It's that let's just start ripping everything down, bring in the tools that I've used before, start building it up there, and then because you haven't really gotten to the the core of the issue, you haven't asked the right questions. The same problems come up, which is the new tools, but they move on.
Yeah.
So they leave the organization actually in a worse spot than prior.
Yeah, I mean, tools, I mean, are not going to solve leadership issues. They're not going to solve people and process issues. They may help be part of the solution, but unless we identify and fix those things, tools may put a little bit of, I guess, the proverbial lipstick on the pig, but the lipstick's going to wear off pretty quick, and we're back to where we were, and to me, it's no wonder why so many executives and analytics teams alike are so frustrated, because we're caught up in this cycle that we're trying to address it with tools, and again, I don't want to put the blame on vendors for being really slick in their sales and marketing, but again, I do think a lot of them are doing it purposefully to take advantage of companies that are frustrated, that don't understand their why, and rather than educating, they're taking advantage to sell them more tools because it gives them that momentary dopamine hit of, we fixed everything, this is going to be better. And by the time they realize it's not better, they're long gone. So, it's a vicious cycle that we need to break out of, both as an industry as a whole and organizations specifically.
And in some ways, it's like those folks that buy they used to be on DVDs. Even saying that shows my age. With the workout DVDs
Yeah.
that are now like part of streaming services.
Right.
They buy them and thinking just the act of buying them is going to get them into shape.
Right.
No, you have to follow the program, follow the steps that come with it to have success with them. You can't just buy them to magically get fit.
Yeah, not only do you need to follow the program, but what's the missing piece? It's leadership, it's guidance,
Consistency.
right? And consistency. And so, a lot of times that can come externally through high end agencies. A lot of times it can come internally if you make the right hire. But yeah, I mean, there's so many pieces that need to align that have to be there, and it's not just the workout DVDs. If we don't have everything else in place, you know what happens. You use it for a couple weeks, if that, then it goes on the shelf and collects dust, and you're like,
yeah.
Why didn't this work? Guess I'll buy another one that's a different program. I'll buy a different program. And we've all fell victim to that. I've fallen victim to that with to-do lists. I don't know how many to-do apps I've downloaded thinking it's the app's fault. If I just get a new app, it's going to motivate me, it's going to fix everything. And it never does, because I'm not addressing the underlying why. I'm lacking the wisdom. Like, wait a minute, why isn't this working? What am I trying to solve for? And if we don't answer that, it doesn't matter how great these tools are. We're going to end up with a huge collection of to-do lists on the iPad that don't get touched.
Yeah, you have to integrate it properly and build a habit around it.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
so I think it's pretty obvious, but I want to ask the question anyway to start wrapping up. Everything we've talked about with this and kind of a bit of the meandering today. We kind of meandered, in a couple of different ways and whatnot. But, the question we try to ask at the end of every episode, what does all of this mean in the context of sustainable analytics?
Well, we've seen it from our own personal lives. And I think the saying from Fight Club that Tyler said is, the things you own end up owning you. So everything we buy, it takes time, it takes maintenance, it takes focus, it pulls away. Even if it's something sitting on the corner, it's taking up space, it's impacting us. And so if we don't have a deliberate purpose, if we don't understand why we're what we're trying to solve for, we're going to end up becoming hoarders. We're going to collect. Going back to how we started this, thinking about the slide that Jen shared. Well, I think we've all seen it like that. It's a mess, right? And that's what our organizations end up looking like. Is we end up collecting all of these tools, and there's no way it can be sustained. Even if we had teams of 20 or 30 or 40 people, but we're talking about teams of 3 and 4 people. It's impossible. I think we have to be realistic with ourselves to say, how much time do we have? How many people do we have to support these things? And we have to buy into this understanding that the things we buy, we're not committing to just buy them, we're committing to maintain them. And so if we fall victim to this mentality of not understanding our why and we're just buying tools to address the problem, I can guarantee you it's 100% unsustainable. There's just no way that you're going to be able to sustain it. And again, I would just ask everyone to think about their own personal life. Like, think about the purchases you've made. How many times have you gone into these like overbuying sprees to buy stuff, and you're like, you finally hit that frustration point of like, it's not that I don't dislike these things or but I literally don't have the time to give them the maintenance that they need to be maintained. I think about one of my neighbors who every time they come over, they comment about my hot tub, about how clean it is. And they're like, oh, like, that is such a burden. I'm like, it literally takes me 15 minutes a week, but I also don't have four-wheelers and side-by-sides and a pool and all these other things that require maintenance. So 15 minutes is nothing, but for them, maybe it's a burden, so they don't do it, so their hot tub looks like crap all the time. These are consequences. These are every time we buy something, we have to maintain it. And so if we're overbuying, if we're over-indexing on tools, it is absolutely proven that we simply can't maintain those. And so there's no way that we can have a sustainable practice if we're buying more tools, especially tools that don't align with why we're doing what we do.
Yeah. I mean, there's some family members right now that we're trying to help downsize. I'm not gonna say who and the circumstances and whatnot. Don't want to get into that, but like just helping them downsize. And the you try to be sensitive that that there's maybe sentimental value, but trying to get them to really and probe deep into why do you have this and why are you holding on to it, because it is like we're watching them, and this stuff is holding them back.
It becomes a burden. It's a huge burden.
Because you brought up the quote from Fight Club. It's a similar line is also in Papa Roach's song Infest from like 99 or 2000. Like ultimately, that stuff that you buy ultimately owns you. Whether it be just the debt you've accumulated to get it, or just like the time and money comes to maintain it. And kind of watching this, it's also kind of been a lesson for me. It's like, God, like really paying attention to buying habits, and even asking myself on even a much smaller scale, like, why am I doing this? What am I going to use it for? Is it going to be worth it because of the time involved?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I love kind of the wording they use for the episode. It's about wisdom. It's having the wisdom to ask why. And we need to figure out how to put up that stop sign, or at least a slow down sign in every one of these buying, especially in our roles. Like, these are big. I mean, hundreds, if not millions of dollars are being spent. We should put up the stop sign and say why. But again, it's amazing how many times it never happens, and we just roll through and buy to buy. So I mean, I think that's the huge takeaway, is just putting in place some sort of control mechanisms to ask the question. And if we don't know why, prioritizing the time to understand that. And I think that's really important.
That's key. It's not just knowing why, it's making sure that you do spend the time to understand the why.
Yeah.
Because we've all seen the show Hoarders on A&E. Mm-hmm. Like, I've even come in as a consultant to organizations that have overbought, and it is the digital version of that.
Yeah.
Either overbought or over-implemented, over-engineered things, and it's trying to pull things apart. It's hard.
it's hard, and they fight you, and they hate you, and they call you names, and
Yeah.
all sorts of things. But what happens when we successfully do it?
Oh, like they feel lighter.
They
They
feel
feel better.
amazing. They're so
Yeah.
grateful. Like it's hard, but we know that it's what is healthy for them to do, and so we're willing to kind of take the verbal abuse and the struggles of going through it, because we understand why they feel that way, but we also understand that if we can help them navigate through that and clear things up, it makes them feel so much better. But it can't stop there. We have to, once we've done that, we have to invest the time in why are we doing what we do, because if we don't, it's just going to go right back to, and we've seen that, and you see that on hoarders, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't address the underlying reason why they were buying all this stuff. So they have this house, they feel amazing, it's clean, they're freed. 6 months later, they're back in the same space, and it happens in organizations as well. We clean it up, we make it clear, we have an understanding that this is a better place to live. They feel so much better about it. Yet, what ends up happening? We don't address the underlying reason why. They don't understand why. 6 months later, it's like, okay, we bought 18 more tools. I'm like, no.
They're right back to where they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's wrap it up there. This has been good. I always like delving into these more higher level topics
Yeah.
that really try to help speak to more than just what's the newest tool, what's the newest feature to look at, like why should you be doing something.
And these are the tough conversations to have, but they're the meaningful ones, right? It may be fun to talk about the new technology, and I see it on LinkedIn all the time. Like all the cool analytics kids are talking about new tools and new approaches and methodologies, and they have 875,000 likes on their posts, and fine, and then it's exciting, but it's these conversations that are the most valuable and transformative, but oftentimes conversations that are tough to have, and more meaningful conversations, and not the scroll through TikTok and scroll through 50 videos in 60 seconds type of conversations. These are conversations that are tough and take time, and you have to really sit down and sit with your thoughts. But if you want to truly transform your organization and leave a mark, these are the conversations you need to be having.
Yes, agreed. Cool. So let's wrap it up there for this week. Thanks again for the time, and we'll talk to everybody later.
See ya.
See ya.